slept like a baby. I just woke up now. And then the following day we went there. We were more than 3, 4, 5. We were just playing. People were looking at us. They were laughing at us. The third day, I had a lot of following. People were there. They wanted to register.
This sort of casual gathering of grannies kicking a ball around, this turned into grannies, Bakegula.
It's just like Bafana. South Africa, the boys, we say Bafana. Those who play soccer, yeah, it's just like Bakegula, Banyana, ladies.
As Bakegula got more and more popular, Mama Becca wanted to take what she'd created to other communities. She traveled to Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and more, scouting fancy-footed grannies and establishing teams across the continent. But Mama Becca wasn't the only one bringing the beautiful game to those, let's say, older than the traditional starting age. In 2010, just as the FIFA World Cup in South Africa was wrapping up, Mama Becca got an email from organizers of the Veterans Cup, now known as Soccerfest, a competition for players over 30 years old. Not quite grannies, to be fair, but still. They were inviting Mama Becca and the Bakegula ladies to Massachusetts to play in their first international competition.
People couldn't believe it, but when we are at the airport, remember that some of them never traveled more than 200 kilometers, but to them, to Johannesburg, to see those big machines going 747 and whatever, they were excited, and I thought maybe they would be afraid because people were telling us, no, it's not good, no, put this and this, and then when we were inside, they would say, oh, it's just like a bus, and people were excited, and we were laughed even when we reached in America.
What did it mean to you to be able to represent your community internationally in that way?
It was like saying, here I have arrived. That's the thing, I have arrived.
That was the unstoppable Mama Becca from South Africa. You just might see us losing to her and her grannies on the pitch one day. This is the Outlook Mixtape. In the 80s, one 23-year-old bought a dilapidated cinema stuffed with old chairs for exactly £1 and turned it into Brixton Academy, an iconic British music venue showcasing artists from around the world, and a cultural epicenter where progressive political movements of the time found a home. The person behind that transformation is Simon Parkes, the son of a fisherman who moved to London from the countryside to satisfy his passion for live music.
So when I was in London, I just went to gig after gig after gig. I had this mindset that I like putting on events. And so I always had it in the back of my mind I could put on events because I was very interested in detail and the experience the punter had, not the promoter or the band, the punter, because they are at the end of the day the most important people.
So when a friend told Simon about a big disused cinema for sale in Brixton, he went to have a look. Damp and mouldy, but what Simon saw was potential.
The key was the sloping floor, and I just thought, wow, this would make a great gig. It's like this, and you can see from anywhere, and it just had a great feel.
For anyone that doesn't know, the floor quite significantly slopes towards the stage, which means
everyone can see.
If you're further back, you can see down on whoever is performing. So there isn't really a bad vantage point.
Correct. When I walked in it for the first time, I went, wow, what a place. Actually, coming from a background like rural Lincolnshire, I had no prejudice towards Brixton, because if you said to a Londoner back in the 80s, early 80s, particularly after the 81 riots, well, Brixton, people used to go, oh, geez, you must be mad, you don't want to go down there.
People thought the area was dangerous.
It was renowned as being a very downtrodden, poor area.
Did you think that reputation was unfair, or it was just reality?
No, it was probably quite justified in some respects, but I think people who lived in Brixton, particularly through that era, were very defensive about Brixton, very proud of Brixton, and it was unjustified in terms of its media thing. Anything bad, it was always Brixton area.
At the time, the building was owned by a brewery, so Simon came up with an idea.
Well, I rang them up first. I was just left college, but I wasn't stupid, and I could tell on the phone they could not believe there was anyone remotely interested in buying this off them because of their neighbourhood and whatever. So I could just tell there was desperation to talk to me. So I went to see them, and I walked in. These lovely two guys, they looked visibly disappointed that a 23-year-old just walked in the building. I didn't have £120,000, which is what they wanted. But I've got a spreadsheet. I said, if I can get 100 gigs a year, this is the amount of money I'm going to make, and this is the amount of beer you're going to sell. Right? That's their business. You could see them going, that's quite a lot of beer. I had no idea what I was doing.
But you were using the right words.
I was using the right words. By the end of it, I persuaded them to sell me the building for £1.
£1?
Yeah, £1. And the 120,000 that they wanted, I said, for every barrel of beer I sell, you can count £10 against it. So that's how you're going to make your money. So if I'm right, you'll do very well, and I can get going with £1. And they agreed. And I think I sold about £7 million worth of beer. So they loved me. I bought a book which was basically a handbook of who's who in the music industry, from agents, bands, and I soon found out that Brixton was just not going to happen. And in my first year, I did 19 concerts, all reggae.
19 concerts is great, but you said to the people you were buying it from that I could probably put on 100 shows a year.
Yeah.
So 19 is definitely not 100.
And reggae concerts don't sell a lot of beer.
Were you scared that you'd bitten off more than you could chew?
No, I was still convinced it was going to work from a live music point of view, despite the feedback I was getting from the mainstream agents, like, you will never get a rock band to go to Brixton.
And that was entirely true until a year in 1984. Simon with Clash for their fundraiser.
Javier Utoff.
Mexico has over 68 recognized indigenous groups, each with a distinctive either textile or craft or designs. So protecting them is viewed as a safeguard to the country's identity and history. Unfortunately, for decades, indigenous communities have seen their work being copied by other brands without any coordinators and the creators of the textile pattern that she used for a very famous design. In 2021, the federal law for the protection of the cultural heritage of indigenous and Afro-Mexican people and community was enacted. However, the law's wording is broad and implementation rules are still on development, and it's not always clear how companies should seek consent. I mean, our legal framework is not enough to start a process. Like Adidas was very lucky, so they went only with a warning, even when there was some economic harm to artisans. And I think their biggest problem would be that they are not going to be able to sell what they already produce. But we, the Mexican people, have to build a better law that we can really use in this type of cases.
And back to you, Jen. Of course, Adidas isn't the only brand that has faced backlash over cultural appropriation.
It's not that unusual. I have seen numerous cases where this has come up over the years. Something similar happened with Prada back in June, when it acknowledged in a letter to an Indian trade group that its sandals were inspired by traditional Indian footwear. And earlier this year, Dior was criticised after its highly anticipated Paris collection featured a gold and ivory houndstooth coat. Lots of people pointed out